I'm somewhat hesitant, it seems, to share this, especially on YouTube. I'm at a point in my life where I want to share more of my experiences to benefit others, but there's always that struggle of putting that out there in the world, and where you don't know where that's going to go. I've had an interesting couple days, and just wanted to share a few kind of stories and things that have been happening. And try to do this in a kind of an unedited type of way as much as possible. I might do some edits along the way, but and I have some thoughts and notes kind of to share, but the main theme is around giving up, like when we feel like, when I have felt like giving up, and I've felt that at different times, in different degrees. Obviously, more recently, it's as I kind of get this YouTube channel launched, it's as kind of mundane as that, to kind of life and death more situations in my life, and then also in the people I relate to as a therapist, as a friend, as a family member. So I guess what sparked this kind of thinking for me has been just a friendship I've had with somebody that's been struggling lately, and so I just had some recent conversations. This triggered some additional thoughts of times that I've felt like giving up in more kind of critical ways. So I had a lunch yesterday with a good friend, known for a while, almost all of his life. He's a little younger than me, and I knew he struggled, but I didn't know to what extent. And so it's become more apparent to me the last month or so that he's depressed, and to the point of not wanting to get out of bed at times, functional, but just having thoughts of not wanting to be around in life, to give up, basically. And so we've just been having conversations about that, and the times that I've felt that way, which have been fairly frequent over the last, I'm turning 60 in the next week. So for those who've been kind of on this channel, you know my conversations with myself about that, and looking forward to it to some extent, and then also having moments of maybe not. So I'm very reflective, along with having these conversations with my friend about his life. Yeah, so he's been struggling, and so we just had this kind of lunch yesterday, and trying to understand where he's coming from, what's going on, but also share some of my experiences. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be relaying in this video as well, my experiences, kind of key moments in my life where I felt like giving up. And maybe this is two videos that I put together. One is just sharing that kind of honest journey that I've been on, but then also maybe following it up with things that helped me along the way to not give up. And so I think the first kind of moment in my life was, and I'm somewhat hesitant, it seems, to share this, especially on YouTube. I'm at a point in my life where I want to share more of my experiences to benefit others, but there's always that struggle of putting that out there in the world, and where you don't know where that's going to go. And the nature of some of my story is you'll see it's not. It's, even though it might be easier in our day and age in some ways, it's not for somebody of my generation. There's still hesitance to share some of the things I've been through, and so you hear that hesitance. I still have that, even though it's probably not much of an issue for many people. So the nature of my story is really kind of, as I thought about it, the intersection of spirituality and sexuality. That seems to be a core theme throughout some of the stories I'll be sharing, and how I've navigated that at different points in my life. So one of the earliest memories that I have, actually from when I was born till about 9 or 10, I've shared this in other videos, that I felt like I was living this Calvin and Hobbes kind of story, where I was very mischievous and happy-go-lucky, and it just felt good about life. Life was good. And then something traumatic, which I maybe share in future videos, happened at 9, and not many people know about. That turned things around for me and really kind of awakened my sexuality. And at that point realized, it seems pretty young thinking back on it now, but that I was gay at 9 or 10. And even though my family didn't, they were, I guess, Christian and maybe conservative, there was no reason for me, even 50 years ago now, to feel like that they wouldn't have accepted me. But I hid that, and I didn't. The culture at the time certainly wasn't as accepting as it is now, for the most part. And I think I just gained that, kind of internalized that homophobia, and so I wasn't okay with it, and was ashamed of that part of my life. So for those from 9, 10 till when I graduated from high school, and then moving into college, there's a lot of questioning, a lot of depression, a lot of suicidal thoughts, not wanting to be gay. And then starting college, played soccer throughout high school, and then played in college. And some of those challenges continued, but I decided that one way I wanted to maybe deal with it was to actually lean more into faith in some way. I wasn't very religious. I was confirmed in church growing up at 13, but hadn't really done much with it or thought much about it. I always believed there was somebody out there, a God of some kind out there. And so I think when I got to college, I got involved in a more conservative group and really committed myself to that, and in hopes of, I think, core one was to give me a sense of purpose. I really felt, even though I was succeeding, I was in pre-med and doing well in kind of most aspects of my life, I felt a lack of purpose. Like what was the point of all this? I was achieving in every area that I wanted to, but I felt empty still. So I was looking for the sense of purpose, which faith seemed to be that one area that could bring that. I was looking for connection to other people. And then also kind of a resolution to my sexuality, to try to not be gay. And that drew me to this Christian group. And so I kind of committed to that from 18, my freshman year of college, till 22. And then that started to unravel. Like I wasn't changing. I had prayed earnestly to change, and I hadn't been changing in my core sexuality. And so I finally came out to a friend at 22, my senior year of college. It was very kind of uncomfortable way. I don't think I even said I was gay. He kind of figured it out, and then he connected me to a Christian at the time who was kind of ex-gay counselor. Which was actually, there was some positive things about it. It allowed me, I looked forward to going to him to talk through, because the first person I had ever kind of met who had come from that background and had apparently worked his way through it, had gotten married to a woman and seemed happy and was helping other people along that way. And so I at the time, didn't think much of it. I think it would be considered more like conversion therapy now, or, but I didn't think of it that way. He was trying to help me just manage my sexuality at the time. And so it did help. I felt relief to some extent. Felt like I was able to be open about it. I shared with my parents for the first time that I was struggling with this, but I was, and also, a core part of it was I didn't want to live because of it. But I was going to fight and fight it and try to change, and they were supportive. I think they probably would have been supportive either way if I wanted to just pursue, the gay lifestyle or not. They were supportive either way. And so yeah, that seemed to help. And then for a couple years, I worked before I went to graduate school. I ended up going to seminary to kind of continue my spiritual journey and learning more about God and the world from that perspective. And then also, I think, continued to think that I needed to continue my journey of faith to resolve this. One of the things the Christian counselor said at the time, said, "You're my mission." I remember this. I remember a couple of things he said, even though it's been 40 years almost. He said that this is your mission in life. This is why you've been given this, to overcome it. This is your battle. And so I took that seriously for quite a while, that this is it. And so going to seminary, that was part of a big part of my theme. I continued to study and research what the Bible said about it, and just confirming that this is what I thought was true. But I found that, right before going to seminary, I hit another low point. And I remember working, I was a valet at a five-star restaurant in our town. And one of the other valets noticed I was not doing well. And I guess I was just kind of distant. And so he just asked me how I was doing. And that was kind of something that helped me kind of wake up to the fact that maybe I wasn't doing as well as I thought, and which kind of led me to graduate school. And I started counseling, a graduate program in counseling, which turned into also a master's in theology. So I got 2 masters in that period of time. The 6 years I was in graduate school. And I loved the community there was incredible. The healing that I found in that kind of faith community was very helpful, very accepting. I think I started to come out to a few people in a sense, like that was something I was struggling with, and I wanted to overcome it, and not, but found support along the way from different people, and which kind of took me to my first professional role at 30, and I started my PhD, so I was in my PhD program as well. And then I think from 30 to 40, I think I was just coasting in some ways. I can't remember any major significant points where it was really bad. I found a good deal of community there. And then towards the end of that time, I wrote a book about my struggles kind of from a faith perspective, that it wasn't something, I didn't want to pursue my sexual orientation to be gay. Still, into my late 30s, I was trying to find a way of expressing that within my faith, and to share that so that I could stay true to my faith. And in that process, I shared with some other colleagues at the university. I became president for a short period of time, and shared kind of my background, my experiences with one of the other, I guess, vice presidents at the time, who had become a close friend, and which really backfired on me. So when he left, he wrote a letter to the board of trustees at the college that there was a celibate homosexual in leadership. And since I was the only single person, it was clear that I was the one he was talking about. And so that just kind of blew up at the university. And even though the board said they were supportive of me, I felt like the thread of the letter, he said he would expose it to a larger audience unless they kind of took care of it, which meant letting me go or firing me. So I decided it was time for me to move on. I've been there for 12, 13 years, and wanted to move back to my hometown, be with my family, and still celibate and committed to that into my 40s. So I was this 40-year-old virgin, so I left there. That's where it kind of got challenging. I was hopeful I was on another journey of taking a break essentially from the higher ed track I was on, professional track, and pursued freelance writing and filmmaking for a couple years, traveled around the world for a couple years, and then decided as a part of that I needed to come out more completely to people and accept who I was. During that process, one of my friends challenged me. He said, "You know, have you ever thought about just accepting yourself?" And it struck me like this is. I never thought that was possible. Because as a Christian, I thought this is not something I thought was possible. And he actually mentioned another guy that went to seminary with us and had gone through the same thing and just decided to just accept his sexuality, his sexual orientation. So that was a turning point for me at, I think, 42. During my journey around the world, I called it 12 Months to Live, and it kind of created a project out of that, which I have caught on film as well, which I'll share links to that process. It was really my coming out year, 2 years. So I decided to come out and kind of left my faith. It was in the process. I was a licensed therapist, so I was kind of one of the things I thought I could do to make some money during that freelance time was to practice in counseling. And so I interviewed with a counseling practice that was owned by a lesbian. And in the interview process, I told her kind of what happened to me at the college that I was at, and that I was kind of struggling still with my identity and trying to accept it, integrate it into who I was. And she said, sometimes she said in counseling people, she was, especially in the area of people who are trying to accept their sexuality, that she noticed that people had to kind of put their faith in escrow or on hold while they came to terms with their sexual identity. And so that's what I felt like I was doing. I needed to do was just kind of set my faith aside, which isn't true for everybody. I know people kind of become more religious and more faith-oriented during difficult times, but for me, I needed to, because all the rhetoric that I heard growing up or during those some pivotal developmental times, I felt like God, I couldn't reconcile the two, so I had to kind of put the faith on hold. And so that's what I did, and to just kind of deal with things. And so you'd think that coming out, you hear these stories that it's freeing, it's the best thing ever, and like for people who have been squelched most of their life, they have the opportunity to just be themselves. I think it is liberating and freeing in many ways, and it was for me for a little while, but then I really came to terms with and realized that being gay, acknowledging you're gay, doesn't mean you're also happy. And so I was at the worst point in my life. I think because I had this thing built up that this would be great, I started dating, but I just didn't like the mindset, like the hookup kind of mentality that I was kind of encountering. I wanted more of a relationship with somebody. And so that process of dating and coming out and trying to set my faith aside, it just got really bad. And I was essentially unemployed. I was freelancing, but not kind of making a living wage. So all of that together made it another time, kind of pivotal time in my life where I just was not doing well. And I remember I was in therapy at the time, and then started on medication, which actually made things worse for me. And I know medication can, and this is no recommendation to anybody who's on medication or thinking about it, because it's very helpful for a lot of people. But for me, at the time, it made it a lot worse. I remember waking up at 3 o'clock one morning and just looking in the mirror, and I didn't notice who I was. I was almost like disassociation I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. And I didn't know, I kind of went back to bed, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night without taking my own life. And I did, obviously, and I talked to a friend at the time who I just told him, I was like, can I come over and just kind of spend the night? And he said, of course, he said, I don't think you realized at the time that it was kind of a life and death situation for me. That was a critical time where I just needed to, the meds were really messing with me, so I needed to make it through that time, and I did. Another thing that helped me during that time, the therapist said, and I kind of told him about some of what I was going through, and he said, your task is just to survive. Don't worry about anything else other than just surviving. And so that became my mentality, my mantra, my mission, just survive. And for me, one thing that helped me during that time was, what kept me motivated was like, if I could just kind of survive and make a difference in one other person's life, that would be amazing. Just to kind of take care of myself, survive, and help one other person. And then if everything else is kind of icing on the cake after that. And during that time of just desperation, that was one thing I held on to that really seemed to help me get through that time. And so that was now early 40s, so almost 60, so 15, 16, 17 years ago, about that. And I won't say it's been easy. I've had periods of, and I've done a lot of what I do on this channel too, is share my experiences, but then also tools and tips that can help you, things that I've done along the way to help myself survive and to help and even thrive. I'm at a place of, I feel like, thriving as I'm moving into 60, more so than ever before in many ways. Part of that is the community I've built. There are several projects I've done along the way, year-long kind of adventures projects that I've created to help me through those pivotal times that I'm sharing on this channel. One of them at 46, kind of going back a little bit from 60 to 46. During that time, I'd stopped, came off the freelancing, made it through that, survived those suicidal years again in my early 40s. And at 46, I came to this point of creating this project I called Project 46 because I was turning 46, and I also read this article, and I think it was The Economist, that said there's kind of a turning point around 46 where people tend to get happier. And that's partly because one of the kind of perspectives was you finally get to a point where you're kind of accepting or realizing some of your accomplishments, but also limitations, and this is kind of owning who you are. In that process, kind of you settle into a sense of peace and contentment, and you're happier with things. And so I created this project called Project 46. And I had 3 intentions for that year: love and life, peace with God, and a job I like. And so it took me process, and I'll share kind of that process as well, how I came up with those 3 themes or intentions. But that helped me focus on those things for the year. I had started dating, but I was struggling with finding romance and settling into that. So I wanted that, partner in crime, I called that him, as well as kind of build and expand my community here in my town. And then the second thing was peace with God, to resolve that sexuality, spirituality kind of issue for me, come to terms with that. And then the last thing was a job I liked. I'd moved from freelance to essentially unemployment and trying to energize my career in some way. So that took me, I kind of gradually got back into a few things, started putting feelers out in the area of higher education and counseling, started back in my counseling practice, and also in higher ed. Got a grant for research that I did with kind of department here and local university, and also some work in Africa. So it started to expand again. My life started to expand. I got a full-time position back into the university. Kind of worked up the ranks there and kind of expanded my life from there. But it was all kind of hinged around this Project 46, which set my course for the rest of my life, the last now 14 years. So that was also a pivotal time. And since then, like I said, I haven't felt the degree of giving up like I did back then. And I think I've learned a lot of kind of survival skills, which I'll get into in maybe another video, like what I did at those turning points that built upon one another to help me get to where I am now, feeling for the most part mostly content, happier. I've had a partner during that, as a result of that project, partly that I've been with for 13 years, and I mentioned I got back into higher ed. I got a career back on track with that, and then my peace with God. I've moved from being kind of a very devout, conservative, religious person to during this period of being an atheist, I think. And now I've told my friend recently, as I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, just kind of open to what might be out there, open to possibility. So I think that peace with God was resolved initially was by just kind of just maybe in a sense not acknowledging or not praying or not trying to have any kind of relationship with God, which I think was necessary. And now to the point where I think that peace is just, I'm open to the possibility of there being something greater than me. So as I reflect back on my conversation with my friend, I actually, after that, I'm a therapist, as you would know if you've been on this channel, but I also believe in going to therapy as a therapist, so I'm going to therapy. Occasionally I go to therapy here and there. And I went actually, after my meal with my friend who expresses some of his challenges, I went to therapy to talk about kind of what's going on with me and shared my experiences with my friend. And it just came up in the conversation that the therapist I was meeting with said that you seem to have a lot of fortitude. And that, kind of struck me as like, oh, like I think that's another word for resilience. So it just maybe be reflective again. That's kind of partly why I'm doing this video. Made me think about those pivotal times in my life when I was resilient and some of the things that have contributed to me having fortitude and grit. Those, some of my experiences I wanted to share with you all to reflect on myself, kind of hopefully walk with my friend who's going through that to kind of share some of that with him as well. So I hope to, in this next, maybe a companion video to this, is just also point to some specific things that I did or that I've learned along the way to be of help as well. If you're in a position of not doing well and not feeling like you are going to make it, please reach out to somebody. What I think has been important for me and my friend yesterday is just connecting with other people. It may not seem like it's going to help, but that has an impact. Just reaching out, sharing your story with somebody else can be that very thing that is a turning point for you. And then one other, just kind of having the mindset of just your job is just to survive right now, just to get by. Let everything else go, but your job right now is to survive. And one way to do that is to reach out to somebody. And I'm a therapist, but this channel is not, this isn't your only source of mental health and shouldn't be considered the epitome, like the advice for your life. So be sure to reach out to a therapist or psychologist. I'll I'll provide a couple options that I've used or been a part of that are reliable. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for listening.